Let's start recording. Hare Krishna. So, chapter 9 is the central chapter and the most essential chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So, the title is The Most Confidential Knowledge. The title itself says that how important this particular topic is for us. So, to set some context, the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talked about how jivas prepare themselves to attain him after death by remembering him at the time of death. So that's the only way to attain Krishna. But to remember him at the time of death requires one to remember him throughout one's life. There is no other option. So this particular chapter is going to help us how we can remember Krishna throughout our life. By understanding the knowledge about Krishna, one can remember him throughout his life. So if you look at the previous chapters also, in 6th chapter, where Krishna talked about yoga, solitary meditation primarily. So he introduced the yoga of seclusion in chapter 6, where one withdraws his senses from the world and practices solitary meditation. And but towards the end of the chapter, Krishna says that devotional meditation is far more easier and far more effective compared to solitary meditation in reclusion. So how one can perform that? Again, that depends on knowledge of the Supreme. Somebody jolly calling me. 1 second. Hare Krishna. Hello. Yeah, hello. Hare Krishna. Yeah, hello. Yeah. I'm in a class. I remember. Yeah, that's true. I have an appointment at 5 p.m. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. Take care. Bye. I'll go there. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. So to remember him at the time of death, one has to remember throughout our life. That's one concept from the 8th chapter. And from the 6th chapter, we understand that towards the end, Krishna says again, devotional meditation is far superior to solitary meditation. Krishna talked about how one can perform solitary meditation by controlling his senses, focusing his mind. The procedures, the details are given there. But towards the end, he says, devotional meditation is far superior. But to again perform devotional meditation, the solution is in the knowledge of the Supreme. So one needs to know how the opulences of Lord and how he relates to the world. Those concepts have to be very clear so that one can really able to achieve the state of meditation on the Supreme Lord. So this chapter actually delineates the knowledge one requires so that he can actually meditate on the Supreme Lord and remember throughout one's life, so that at the time of death we can also easily remember. So what is that devotional meditation is the topic of 7th chapter. And again, Bhagavad Gita is having 18 chapters. This chapter being at the center represents that it is the most essential chapter. Just like in a in a sandwich, we see the essence at the center. Similarly, in a if there is a caravan of vehicles going, the center represents where the most important person, the president or the prime minister, stays. Or in a shell, the pearl is the most essential, which stays at the center of it. So similarly, the essence of Bhagavad Gita is again in the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. That's what all the acharyas have mentioned, that this is the essential chapter of Bhagavad Gita. In this chapter, Krishna outlines the king of all knowledge. The knowledge given here, in the first 3 verses, he talks about the glories of this knowledge. And he mentions that this is the king of all knowledge and the secret of all secrets. The knowledge is given in Bhagavad Gita, anybody can read it, but not many can get it. Anybody can read it, but many will not get it, because one requires to have certain mindset to actually understand and assimilate this message. And this knowledge actually teaches the perfection of spiritual practice and helps us achieve ultimate goal of life. This chapter can be easily remembered with this acronym KING, and the first 3 verses talk about the glories of this knowledge, the knowledge about Lord Krishna, and how Lord Krishna relates to this world. So that is in the second section, in the verses 4 to 10. How, many people have confusion. If God is all benevolent, all loving, why there is so much suffering in this world? How actually, one thing is to know God exists. Second thing is to know how actually he relates to this world. This is where many people have a conflicts of various, understandings. So Krishna himself clarifies his position in relation to the material world. And based on the different understandings, people have, based on different understandings of the Supreme Lord, people have different conceptions of worship. They have, we'll discuss all the conceptions of worship that people have in their mind in approaching the Supreme Truth. So that is the third section, 11 to 25. And then towards the end, Krishna just focuses fully on the glories of the process of bhakti. So this is the overall outline of this 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So we should understand why Krishna calls this as the most confidential, because by understanding and assimilating this knowledge, one can understand his true position and nature of the soul in relation to God. So if you look at all the topics that we discussed above, one needs to know about God. One needs to know how Lord acts within this world. That's the second topic I taught. And when we read various things, various philosophers talk about various, their understanding of God, we need to understand where these people actually fit. Is my understanding the proper understanding? So, for example, today I was reading about a conversation between Einstein and Rabindranath Tagore from India. You all heard about Rabindranath Tagore. Right? He's a great poet and author, a Nobel Prize winner as well. And Einstein, we know, is the greatest scientist world ever had. So these two minds have discussed the concept of God. There is nothing else they discussed, just focused on this concept of God. And because I went through this non-worship, the various people's conception of God, I could see where exactly these two people fit. Both of them don't have Keval Bhakti. They either fit in the pantheistic mode, or we'll discuss those concepts. So they fit in their Anangropasana, and there are 4 types of worships that we'll discuss. When I discuss it becomes more clear. They fit in that. So it's very clear when Krishna gives this knowledge, we can relate how the various forms of understandings of God exist, and we don't get confused. Hey, this is also okay. This is also a way of thought process that Krishna has already mentioned. So that takes away any confusion about our own understanding of God based on what Krishna mentioned here. So even though they are the greatest minds, and one may think this may be the highest concept of God, actually both of them have very different kinds of understanding of God, and they're not able to come to a conclusion about that, because both are extremely philosophical in their thought process. extremely reasonable in their way of understanding. So one may wonder, well, is that the truth? Once we read this chapter, we know actually that's not the highest truth, because whatever is their thought process is already talked about by Krishna here. So that's as I mentioned, the most confidential. Why is it called most confidential? Because it gives the true understanding of the soul in relation to God. Right. So there are various, understandings of God. For the lowest people, the belief in God is intellectually mature or philosophically near. But we all understand through any logic or reason, if you just analyze this material nature itself, the intricacies of the creation, one must you know uh, one must clearly come to a conclusion that there must be some conscious intelligence behind all of this. It can never happen in a random fashion, that such a look at the complexity of I. So many forces, so many uh, intricate operations come together to make that functioning happen, right? A small disturbance in that operation creates a havoc in one's life, right? You have to go through surgery to fix a minor thing. So any person with any basic rationality must accept that there must be some higher conscious intelligence for all the complexity that exists within this world, right? So it must be a person who is stubborn, irrational, or illogically predisposed only can reject God, which is atheism. Atheism is a illogical predisposition towards denial of existence of God. And Krishna tells exactly what are the qualities that make Arjuna a qualified student to understand this wisdom, this particular confidential knowledge about God. And that he says is Arjuna's two qualities are he is non-envious and he is faithful. To receive any knowledge in this world, one must have faith. Without faith, we cannot progress in knowledge, isn't it? We all understand that basic fact that without having any faith, we cannot understand even mathematics. You cannot understand any subject. So faith is like a prerequisite. And having faith in Krishna and being non-envious is the qualification for one to understand the knowledge about Krishna. Yeah. So Krishna also glorifies how great this knowledge is in these first three verses. Because generally whenever we do some activity, there is always some background process that says, hey, what is there that I'm going to get by doing this? So Krishna glorifies this knowledge and the greatness of this knowledge, so that one can see what he's going to gain. It's not like completely selfish to think like that. It could be just utilitarian, because we don't have infinite time to pursue and understand everything in this world. So given what we have, we need to know it's absolutely fine to actually just look at what we can learn from this, just for utilitarian purpose, to and so that we can prioritize. And so that's why Krishna glorifies about this knowledge in the first few verses. And then Krishna talks about his inconceivable relation with this world, right? Mm. So what is the inconceivable relationship with this world? So when we function in this world, how exactly God relates to this world, right? What is his role? Does God control everything in this world? And if we have free will, how is God the supreme controller? These are the questions which generally come to any sane mind, right? If God is the supreme controller and I have a free will, how is that he's the supreme controller, right? That's a natural question that anybody gets. Um, and also we hear sometimes the sayings like, hey, not even a blade of grass moves without the will of Lord, isn't it? That also we hear. So if God's will is supreme, how will it leave any room for our free will? Right? That's so. All these questions are in general answered in this section of Bhagavad Gita. So especially Bhagavad Gita 9.6 talks about this. So 9.6, the verse Yatakasha sthito nityam vayu sarvatra go mahan tata sarvani bhutani mastani iti upadhraya. So understand that as the mighty wind blowing everywhere rests always in the sky, all created beings rest in me. So this is exactly how Lord relates to this world. So we see in this world, wind is blowing everywhere, but all of the rests within the sky, right? So sky is like the resting place, and all of this wind can move freely, but it has certain boundaries within which it can move. So that's exactly how Lord relates to the jivas within this existence. Meaning, um, so jiva has the free will, and so he can move around, he can act according to his free will, but the perimeter to which he can act, or the framework within which he can act, that is limited by God. So for example, we all are given the ability to speak. So using that ability, we can we can disgrace somebody, or shout at somebody, or belittle somebody, or we can use the same ability to encourage, inspire, right? We have the ability to speak, right? um, and how much we can how much we can do is also limited. For example, if you want to sing, you may not be able to sing like, say, Swarup Damodar Prabhu or some great singer, right? So again, that is limited based on our own karma. So within the limitations, we have freedom, right? So the God defines the boundary. God doesn't determine our actions, but he determines the scope of our actions, right? So within that scope, we are free. So this is very important to understand. This helps us understand what's our capacity and responsibility. So if we overestimate our capacity, we think we can do everything, right? That's how people start in their life, and then they get disheartened because their psychophysical nature and skill set is not suitable for certain things. So one should understand, if we overestimate, we think that we can do everything, and we feel disappointed when we can't achieve things. If we underestimate, we think that we cannot do anything. Both are two extremes. Mm. So we should not be doing either, right? We should understand that we have certain abilities. Within our abilities, we can achieve certain things, right? So there is one serenity prayer that says, "Oh God, give me the strength to change the things that I can change, endure the things that I cannot change, and wisdom to know the difference." You see, it's a very beautiful prayer. So this, give me the strength to change the things that I can change, endure or tolerate the things that I cannot change, and the wisdom to know the difference. Means I should know my capacity and limitations. Once we know that, we can relate to this world. We don't feel disappointed when we don't achieve things. We should understand where our limitations are, where our strengths are, and use our strengths to the best ability in the service of God, right? That's how. So yeah. So the qualities and the activities of Lord are deemed inconceivable. Again, this is another concept in this discussed in this chapter, in this particular section. So why are they considered inconceivable? Right? Because the character and greatness and the capacity of God are far supreme compared to us. So this kind of exposes our inability to comprehend Lord through simple mundane logic and reason. That's why our Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta is called Achinta Bhed Abhed. Right? Inconceivably, simultaneously, one and different. That's how the Jiva and the Supreme are related. It's inconceivable because one should accept his limitation in understanding God. That's how we receive the grace of God. Even after reading so much about about how God is great from Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Bhagavad Gita teaches who is God. Bhagavatam teaches us how how God is great, right? Through various stories, uh, stories of various devotees and the demons. So we learn about the greatness of God. But again, at the end of it, we should understand we cannot really fully understand God. If we understand God, then we are like God because God is unlimited in his characteristics and qualities. This is another important concept to understand, that God is not conceivable to human understanding completely. Yeah. So any questions so far in what we discussed and how God relates to this world and how God is inconceivable in his capacities? Right. So we understand how God is relating. God relates to this world. Yeah.
Through the word inconceivable, um, uh, even the devote, from a devotee perspective, uh, the devotee still understands the Lord, or it is beyond his understanding also.
We understand some conception of God, meaning personality of God. But we don't understand fully, right? So there was the story of Brahmana and cobbler. You all know about that, right? You remember? Should I relate quickly? Once Narada Muni was wandering in this world, and he meets two people. One is a very well versed in scriptures. One person is a Brahmana who is very well versed in the scriptures, knowledge of the scriptures. Right? He meets him, and that Brahmana was so excited that Narada Muni came from Vaikunta. And he asked him, "What is Lord Narayana doing in the Vaikunta?" And Narada Muni says he is trying to thread an elephant through a needle. You heard that, right? And the Brahmana gets gets a shock of his life. Why would Narayana do such things? It's not a good use of his time. So he would not believe what Narada Muni says to him. Then okay, then he petitions Narada Muni to ask on behalf of him to Lord Narayana, when is he coming back? Then Narada Muni says, okay, next time I meet you, I'll go to talk to you about that. Next, he meets a cobbler, a very simple cobbler. He's uneducated, but he has a heart of devotion, heart full of devotion to Lord Narayana. So he asks him how. No, again, he asks how is Lord Narayana, the cobbler. Narada Muni says same thing. Lord Narayana, he's trying to needle a elephant through the eye of a needle. Right? Then the cobbler gets excited. My Lord is inconceivable. Only he can do such things. Nobody else can do such things. He just completely have that faith that Lord is inconceivable. Just because I cannot understand the activities of Lord doesn't mean that Lord doesn't do such things. My Lord is really incomprehensible, inconceivable. Only he can do such things. That's what he says. Again, he asks same question, just please check with the Lord if when I will be coming back to his lotus feet. Cobbler asks that. And Lord Narayana goes back and relates the stories of both cobbler and Brahmana to Lord Narayana. And Lord Narayana, and also asks about the questions they asked. And Lord Narayana tells that the Brahmana is going to have many more lifetimes to before he comes back to me. And regarding cobbler, Lord Narayana says, yes, he is coming back in this very life. And the same thing, he's going to go back and relate to both of them. So the story is, we should understand that Lord is inconceivable. Otherwise, the complexities and many complexities of this world will leave us in doubt. Hey, how does Lord exist? So we should accept that we are like a small tiny ant. A tiny ant cannot understand the structure of this building, right? We teach in Discover Yourself. So similarly, the inconceivable characteristics of Lord are incomprehensible to human mind. We should understand that. But within the descriptions that are given, like Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam teaches so much that we are able to attain devotion to the lotus feet of Lord, because that's what is needed for us, and that is fully given, right? As much you need to achieve that much is given there. Is that making sense? But
Yes.
but beyond that, Lord is far supreme, and we cannot comprehend. For example, right, all that we learn through within our entire Guru Parampara is how Radharani's love towards Krishna is. That is one. That is actually only one aspect of it. Right? There are other great devotees who have similar loving relationship with Lord Krishna, and we don't understand, right? There is another party of gopis whom we don't even approach. Their path of devotion to Lord is considered way different than what the approach that is the mood and reverence of Radharani. We approach that through her, right? So like that. So there are many ways to approach also. Even what we are given within one parampara is a particular focus, and we follow that, and that is enough to achieve perfection. Yeah. So even after hearing about the opulence of Lord, right, many still misunderstand, right? Because they don't have faith. What are the two problems that can be? Like we discussed in the beginning, to understand all the knowledge is given in Bhagavad Gita, but based on one's own faith and one's own attitude towards God, whether he's envious or not, one comprehends the message accordingly. It's the most secret of secret, but not everybody opens the secret. Not everybody has the key to open the secret. The key is non-enviousness and having faith in the words of God, to actually accept it as it is without any kind of misinterpretation. So that key, if you don't have, even though Bhagavad Gita is an open book, the secret remains as a secret. You cannot understand it. Yeah. So another primary reason people have difficulty in accepting the supremacy, the superhuman characteristic of Lord Krishna is that he appeared like another human when he appeared 5,000 years back. So he deemed by many as a historically a great person. All these other stories were added later. Kind of so many, misunderstandings were added to it. So they, for them, because they understand the limitations of a human body, accepting a personal form of God, for them is a very elementary and infantile concept. But actually, it's not the truth, right? Krishna himself rejects such understanding of God, right? So Krishna talks about, various, conceptions of God that people have come up with while living in this, while philosophical or trying to understand God. Because everybody, the human spirit has this desire to understand the eternal truth, and according to one's own, abilities and attitude, one actually comes up with various conceptions. So the first conception was of the impersonalists. Again, within the impersonalists, there are two types of impersonalists. One is called a Mayavadi, the other is called Brahmavadi. So Brahmavadi accepts that there is personality of God and there is impersonal absolute truth. They accept both, but they are more attracted to the impersonal aspect. And they also think that impersonal aspect is the source of the personal aspect. You see, that's the difference between we also accept personal aspect, impersonal aspect. We accept that personal aspect is the source of impersonal aspect, right? That's our understanding. The impersonalists, primarily the Brahmavadis, accept existence of both, but they consider the Brahman is the source of the Brahman is the source of Bhagavan. Right? That's the misconception they have. But Krishna clearly says that Brahmanohi Pratishtaham. I am the source and the resting place of Brahman. He clarifies, I am the source means me, the person Krishna, is the source of Brahman. So we don't accept the understanding of Brahmans. Impersonalist, impersonalist. And the other impersonalist is Mayavadi. Krishna rejects them completely as mudas, the foolish people. Avajananti ma muda, manishim tanumasriya. Avajananti ma muda, manishim tanumashritam, param bhavam ajananto, mama bhuta maheshwaram. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the supreme lord of all that be. See, clearly he rejects him to be compared to another regular human being. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form because they don't really understand. They do not know my transcendental nature as the supreme lord of all that be. So they don't understand the supremacy of the supreme lord. So they misunderstand the form of Lord when he appears in this world. So this is referring to the Mayavadis. For Mayavadis, so they think that Krishna's form is also illusionary. The form that we worship is also illusionary. They think that their body is illusionary, Krishna's body is illusionary. If say, for example, they worship, a form, that form, they think that that is also Maya, and they have to go beyond that Maya. So that's their misunderstanding, right? So that is Mayavadis. So Mayavadis' conception of God is like that. So they mistake, so in one line, they mistake Krishna's body to be material, right? So their idea of worshipping a form is to use that as an aid to come out of illusion. That is also an aid, In aid is also illusion, but it's a means to achieve the ultimate goal of the Brahman, right? So that's why, Krishna says, those people won't even come back to him. They don't even achieve Brahman, by the way. If you if somebody has Mayavadi understanding, they don't achieve anything. They don't achieve any liberation. So that is verses 11 and 12. And then 13 and 14 talks about exclusive devotion to personality of Godhead by the pure devotees. So, sorry.
Prabhu, one question on material. When you say material, how do we understand that? Do Mayavadis consider that, okay, Krishna is born at a particular time, he lives, and then he's gone? Is that the understanding of their understanding of material?
No. So no, it's not exactly like that. So their understanding is the supreme truth is Brahman. Brahman, that supreme truth comes in contact with modes of nature, and on purpose, they come in contact with mode of goodness and assumes the form of the Lord that appears in the world. They don't accept just like any other human being. They accept that he is a some kind of great personality, but they consider the body the Lord has is again completely material. Am I making sense? So Lord's body is material. That's their understanding.
Right.
Yeah, he may be powerful, but so I mean, they otherwise they can use any other human being to to worship any human being. They worship again these forms only. They worship only Lord Krishna or or Lord Rama, but their understanding is the body that Lord Rama has is again material, is not
Mm.
is not transcendental. They worship
Right.
only these forms. They don't worship any random human being, right?
Mm.
No, yeah. So they understand that there is this there are these personalities who are who are not from this material world. But the problem is they think the body of Lord is temporary. It's not
Okay.
transcendental. Yeah,
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's clear, bro. So the body is temporary. That is
correct,
their understanding. Okay.
correct.
Mm.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure. Okay.
So Kavala Bhaktas. So these are various people who approach the Lord in various ways. One is first section is the impersonalists. Second section talks about the great devotees. So in that Krishna says, Mahatmanastu Mam Partha Daivim Prakritamashita Bhajanti Ananyamanaso Nyatva Bhutadim Avyayam. O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under my protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotion service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. You see, that is their understanding. Original and inexhaustible. They are fully engaged in devotion service. And because they do that, they're always under the protection of the divine nature. Daivim prakritam ashritaha. Because they are not under the purview of the modes of material nature, the three modes of material nature. They are under the purview of Daivi Prakriti. Next verse also talks about Kaval Bhaktas. Satatam kirtayanto ma yatantascha dridavrata namasyastancha mam praktya nityayukta upasate. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing before me, bowing down before me. These great souls perpetually worship me with great devotion. So this is the attitude of Kaval Bhaktas, 13 and 14. And then So these are two extremes. One is considering Krishna to be materialistic, having a material body. The other extreme is accepting Krishna as the ultimate truth and always worshipping him, remembering him, and being protected by his divine nature. That is the Kevala Bhaktas. In between these two extremes is the various levels of evolution of understanding of the Supreme. So the first is
Prabhuji, sorry to interrupt before you go into details. The word Kevala means only here?
Exclusive devotion.
Okay.
So
which is the best
Best understanding.
Best understanding.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Krishna says the same. Yeah.
So everybody should aspire to be a Kevala Bhakta. Is that correct?
Yes. Okay. Everybody should aspire to be a Kevala Bhakta, as clearly mentioned in these verses. Because he says only, they are under my divine protection only to these. He will not say the same thing to any others. Daivim Prakritim Ashita. They are always protected by my divine energy.
Yeah. And in this also, I think Krishna has given it in the between the two extremes. I mean, not extremes, but the main content is given in between. That's
correct.
Nice.
Yeah. So now verse 15 talks about three types of worshippers. One is called Ahangropashana. Ahangropashana means one who worships self as God. Ahangropashana. This is close to what Ravindranath Thakur was actually. He is a mix between Ahangropashana and Vishwarupapashana. As for my understanding of his conversation. And then next, another type of conception of God is Pratikopashana. Means God exists in various forms and one can worship any of these forms, right? So this is called Panchopasana, worshipping various demigods. To they think that God has manifested these various forms to actually to ultimately achieve him through all these other representations of him. So all these people who worship the various demigods fall under this category of Pratikopashana. Ahankropashana. Aham means self, so that is worshipping self as God. Pratikopashana means, Pratik means multiple forms, so that is worshipping all the demigods. And then thirdly, Vishwarupa Upasana, which is understanding that there is nothing beyond this material universe. Everything that is comprehensible is within this universe, and universe itself is God. Meaning, so everything is divine. It's called, also in another word for this is called pantheism, like Pan America, right? So all inclusive, universal conception of God, where universe itself is considered as God. Everything is a manifestation of God. In a sense, it is correct, but it is also wrong in the sense that it doesn't have its boundaries. It's like there are waves everywhere, right? I mean, there are waves everywhere. You need a way to tap it. You cannot use this method of worship to achieve anything substantial. It's called Vishwarupa Upasana. Vishwarupa means the universal worship of God.
So who are such followers, Prabhu? Any examples?
I was also actually looking for that examples. I mean, definitely there are many people who talk about this. Pantheistic people, like even Vivekananda appeared to me like that. They have no very clear conception of God. They don't worship demigods, but they always talk about universal existence of God. So for them, material nature itself is God. Take it that way, right? I don't know exactly who all fall in this. I don't have a good examples, because nobody comes up saying, "Oh, I'm actually this kind of worshipper," right?
Based on what I hear, I think Sri Ravi Shankar is around like that. I think
possible, yeah. I don't know much about him. Yeah, Many people are like that actually, because when you don't have that faith in personality of Godhead, you will land up in one of these three categories. And in fact, you can read any of the philosophies, you will understand actually they fall in these three categories only, not anywhere else.
Prabhu, the Native Americans were worshipping
Nature. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah, that's a very good example. In fact, a lot of tribals also worship this kind of have the fire as God or sun as God. Sun as God is actually a little superior to this understanding, because at least they ascribe to a particular object or a particular thing that they witness.
But sorry, bro. Then Patrika Pasana and Vishwarupa Upasana, how is that different? Because you are telling sun god. Here, sun god is also, I mean, he can be.
Yeah. Actually, sun god is actually more or less like Pratikopasana. Yeah, I was wrong. It's more like, because you're approaching a particular deity, because you see that the sun is providing me sunlight every single day, I must be grateful to him. That's a very valid conception of God, but that's not the supreme conception of God, right? So but also in a way it is actually nature, right? I mean, in nature you see the daylight is coming, helping me, the air is helping me, so many things are making me sustain in this world, so I must be grateful and I must be worshipping them. So that is like Vishwarupa Upasana, right? Just by observing nature, one becomes very grateful to it, right? If one has sane mind and he doesn't have access to higher wisdom like Bhagavad Gita, he that's where he's if he's a benign, if he's not just, most people are self-centered, right? So they don't even approach this level of understanding of by observing nature. They start relating to it in a better way with a gratitude, right? So they just they again go back to demigods to ask for certain things. But certain people, just by observing nature, they become grateful to it. So that is like a universal conception of God. But the way Pratikopasana would be better than universal worship is, universal worship is more or less admiration only. There is no in Pratikopasana you can approach scriptures and make a clear advancement, at least to a um, you may approach Brahmanas, you may learn more about God. So all those opportunities are available. But Vishwarupa Upasana, they don't accept any conception, personal conception or scripture. So they just worship nature.
So the God consciousness in Vishwarupasana is far lower than Patrikapasana.
Yeah, I mean,
is
that
statement right?
Because it's staying in ignorance, right? You do not take any help. You have a conception of God, but hey, all these are naturally arranged for my good, so I worship them, right? So this nature is so benevolent to me. Yeah, so that remains there. So as long as you don't practice, you don't strengthen your muscle, right? So Pratikopasana, in that actually one approaches a Brahmana, worships a demigod. So there is a kind of clear expression of gratitude, and there is a transfer of energy from this person's work towards the demigod, and the demigod is again representation of Supreme Lord, so he can direct him accordingly, right? At some point he'll direct him to the Supreme Lord. But all of that is difficult in Vishwarupa Upasana. That's where it is. Ahanguru Upasana is the lowest actually, because that is is like self-centered, right? Completely, he's worshipping himself as God. He cannot. It is a higher concept than being just materialistic. He sees that hey, there is something within me that wants to always be happy. What is that self? Maybe that self is the representation of the Supreme, and that is the Supreme, right? So then they start worshipping that core within them. Worshipping self means not the just the glorifying his material activities, worshipping the soul within. Right? So that's another kind of understanding. Yeah, so this we discussed various understandings of God. So all such persons sidestep the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whom one can see face to face and have a relationship with. So because they do not have faith, they do not accept any higher authority, all these people struggle in various conceptions, pratikopasana, anangropasana, right? So they are stuck there. They do not achieve higher conception of God. But for the Keval Bhaktas, because they luckily have achieved that, the ability to completely remember God all the time, right? Always satatam kirtayantam, always be able to remember and glorify. They had such faith and gratitude towards Lord, and they're able to make, eventually they're able to achieve, face-to-face interaction with the Supreme Lord and develop a very direct relationship with the Lord. Yeah, so not all paths lead to the same goal. So one achieves according to one's motivation and understanding of the absolute truth. So this is a verse, right, that talks about how one can see the Supreme Lord. Preman janat churita bhakti vilochanena santha sadaiva hridayeshu vilokayanti yam shama sundara machincha gunaswarupam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Can anyone read the translation?
I worship the primeval Lord Govinda, who is always seen by the devotee, whose eyes are anointed with the pulp of love. He is seen in his eternal form of Shyamasundara, situated within the heart of the devotee.
Yeah. So such a person, it is in the eye of the devotee. So the bhakti acts like a pulp of love. It's like a layer on the eye. With that eye, he can see the eternal form of the Lord always. Sometimes we hear from the conversations or stories of Prabhupada. Prabhupada would sometimes stunningly stand at one place and tears would roll in his eyes, from his eyes. And later on he relates that he's actually seeing the form of the Supreme Lord right before him. Another time, once Prabhupada was in Vrindavan, the construction of the Krishna Balaram temple was going on, and suddenly, and it's in the middle of the night. Suddenly Prabhupada went to the top of a building, which is still under construction, and was with his eyes totally glistening, shining. He was watching in mesmerization. And some of the devotees also followed Prabhupada. It's midnight, 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. And none of them, they're all surprised what's going on. And Prabhupada smilingly relates after that, hey, you didn't see Krishna Balaram were going on a chariot right across our temple. So like that. So they can perceive the Supreme Lord when when the eyes are fully anointed with the pulp of love for the Lord. There are many such stories of Prabhupada. Yeah, and towards the after describing, so far Krishna first glorified the knowledge that is given in this chapter, and then he talked about the the relationship with the material world he has, and how one can understand Lord in relation to the material world. And then after that, he talked about people that approach the Supreme Lord in various ways, between the two extremes. One is, Kevala Bhakta, the other is the Mayavadi or impersonalist. After giving all of that, he focuses exclusively on the glories of bhakti. So Krishna establishes that the personal form of God to be the highest and most complete manifestation of the Supreme Lord. Right? So the verse 26 is the most important verse in this kind of very practical. Can you see my screen where I'm showing?
Yes, Prabhuji. Glories of.
Okay, let me verse. You see the verse? No. Voice is breaking.
Veda sequence.
Yeah, okay. Patram pushpam phalam toya yome bhakta prayachati tamaham bhakti upahritam asnami prayata manaha. Can anyone read this?
Offers you with love and devotion, a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it.
So generally, this is a very profound concept. When the people in this world see us, they see outside in. But when Krishna sees us, he sees inside out. What does it mean by outside in versus inside out? So suppose when people relate to us, they relate to us, they see, when first time when you meet them, they call it first impression, right? The first impression is formed based on the way you are speaking, or the dress you are wearing, or the house you have, the whatever. So all the external attributes. So this is how everybody perceives other people in this world. It's called outside in approach. Outside in means you first, they don't really look at what you're thinking inside, or what's your heart is really, right? They don't really get any understanding, because that's how the world operates. So we approach anything outside in. But Krishna, on the other hand, does it inside out. Inside out means Krishna looks what's inside one's heart, right? So he doesn't really care what externally one has. It means you can give a simple leaf, a flower, or a fruit, or water, and can still satisfy Lord with the simplest of the things, if you have the true love and devotion towards the Lord. That is the only requirement one needs to have. And with that, even if you offer a simple leaf, flower, or a fruit, Lord will be satisfied. He sees inside out. So externally, you may not have any talents, you may not exhibit any externally great qualities, you may not have any achievements also, no material achievements externally. But if your heart is gold, that's what Lord sees, right? He will accept such devotion. Can anybody give some examples of the poorest people who are, the simplest people who satisfy Lord from Bhagavatam, or any?
Sudama did.
Yes, Sudama is one great example. Anybody else? For example, Jadabharat. Externally, everybody rejected, right? He's a perfect example for what we are discussing. Outside in, everybody perceived his externals and rejected him as a foolish idiot. Sorry? Oh, somebody said something. I think my voice is going off and on. Okay. Yeah. So Jadabharat is a perfect example of outside in versus inside out. But his heart is gold. And Krishna, he completely understands Krishna and the purpose of life, but nobody recognized until King Rahugana, happens to meet him and understand his great qualities, right? So that's another great example of such quality. So Krishna doesn't look at what we are inside. He looks at what we are outside. He looks at only what we are inside. Right? To approach God in the most intimate and personal way, one requires the greatest qualification, which is the complete purity of consciousness. And this is exactly what we are trying to achieve through the practice of bhakti, especially through the process of chanting. Cheto Darpana Marjana. Please cleansing the mirror of the mind, which is full of dust right now, free of any tinge of selfish motivation. And how do you achieve such purification of the consciousness of mind? That you can achieve by constant spiritual absorption with body, mind, and word in Lord, right? Where one's entire life becomes a spiritual offering saturated with love and devotion. And this is exactly what Prabhupada has given us as the path of devotion. This is exactly is Krishna consciousness. And this is the essential teaching of Bhagavad Gita. To always remember Krishna and to never forget Krishna. Yeah. So that is the essence of this chapter. And this is another beautiful verse. Yat karoti yadasnasi yajjuhosi dadasi yat tapasyasi kaunteya tat kurusva madarpanam. Can anyone read?
Oh, we are still seeing. Okay, only now it refreshed.
Can anyone read?
Yeah, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me.
Such a powerful verse. Whatever you eat, whatever you offer to other people, or whatever you offer means any work you give to your company, that's also an offering, or to or anything you give away, and whatever austerities you perform means whether raising in the morning or chanting the holy name, performing ekadasi, anything you do, or visiting a holy dham, doesn't matter. Understand that that is an offering to Lord. I am doing for you. This is exactly the conception we are trying to develop in the last few weeks. I do it for you, O Lord. I have no other agenda in what I do. Yeah. Can you read this, Mataji?
The
Translation directly. Yeah.
translation. 1 minute, I'll open it in my laptop. Thus, it is the duty of everyone to mold his recommends one should work for him. Everyone has to eat something to live. Therefore, he should accept the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna. Any civilized man has to perform some religious ritualistic ceremonies. Therefore, Krishna recommends, do it for me.
Yeah.
To give something in charity. Krishna says, give it to me. And this means that all surplus money accumulated should be utilized in furthering the Krishna conscious movement. Nowadays, people are very much inclined to the meditational process, which is not practical in this age. But if anyone practices meditating on Krishna 24 hours a day by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, rounds his beats, he is surely the greatest meditator and the greatest yogi, as substantiated by the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita.
The last verse there. Can you read this translation? Only just translation.
Prabhupada. Beats, the meditator and the greatest yogi, as substantiated by the 6th chapter.
Yeah. Okay.
That one. Okay.
Yeah. I think there is some lag between me and you all.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, I don't know if it's only
the
my
sharing
side
is
or
lagging, bro. Whatever the voice and the sharing, there's significantly.
Oh, I see. Okay. I just wanted translation to be read. Okay, let me just read through them. In this way, you will be freed from bondage to work and its auspiciousness.
We had
So now your sharing, okay. Now it's synced up. Okay.
Okay, I think some lag.
is everybody having issue or only Rajikripa Prabhu side?
I am.
It's
It's my side, I think. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So actually,
No problem.
yeah, I need to head out somewhere. I think we are done with this thing. I just wanted to read last few translations, last 3-4 verses. But it's okay. I think we can end here. I think we covered all the concepts. Okay, so is that fine?
Happy Krishna conscious anniversary, Prabhuji and Mataji.
Happy Krishna conscious wedding anniversary,
Krishna
Prabhuji and
conscious wedding
Mataji.
anniversary, Prabhuji.
Happy wedding anniversary, Prabhuji.